parents canceled my wedding because I didn't let them pick the venue. So I said, "This isn't your vow renewal," and went ahead without them. The next day, Mom showed up to my house screaming I'd ruined her social standing. "Maeve, be serious. You really think a dock and a boathouse are appropriate for a wedding?" My mom looked at me like I'd suggested holding the ceremony in a parking lot behind a gas station. "It's what we want," I said, setting down my mug and trying to keep my voice calm. Mom sighed dramatically, looking at my dad like she expected him to step in and fix this. But Alton stayed quiet, just like he always did when she got like this. "It's your wedding," she said. "But don't expect us to stand by while you make a spectacle of yourself." That was the moment I knew things were about to fall apart. I'm 32, and I live in Charleston, South Carolina. I got married last fall to a man I love more than I thought I could love anyone, Ronan. He's calm, practical, and thoughtful. He works in structural engineering and could talk for hours about building codes and steel beams, but somehow still made me feel like the most interesting person in the room. My parents, Loretta and Alton, have always been a little traditional. They value image, reputation, and above all else, control. Especially my mother. When Ronan and I got engaged, I was happy, really, deeply happy. We'd been together 3 years, and we just fit. It felt right. When we told my parents, they acted thrilled at first. My mom immediately started talking about venues, vendors, and how we'd need to get started quickly because the best places book early. At the time, I didn't think much of it. I appreciated her enthusiasm. I knew she'd want to help. But I figured we'd all collaborate. That wasn't what she had in mind. Without asking me, my mom reached out to Magnolia Glen, a grand old plantation-turned-wedding venue just outside the city. It's where she and my dad got married 40 years ago. I'd been there as a kid. It was beautiful, sure, but it didn't feel like us. Ronan and I had found a different spot. A smaller, rustic boathouse venue in Bluffton that overlooked the water. It had this quiet charm to it, sunsets that turned everything golden, wild grass swaying in the wind, and a dock that stretched into the river like a whisper. We fell in love with it the second we saw it. When we told my parents about it, that's when the shift happened. My mom went cold. "A boathouse," she said like it tasted sour. "Do you know what people will say? Do you think your guests want to drive to Bluffton and stand in the mud?" "They'll be standing on the dock," I said. Her expression was blank. She didn't hear me. Or she didn't care. She brought up our family's reputation and how people will expect better from the daughter of the Lanes. "Mom, this isn't your wedding," I said. "This isn't a vow renewal for you and Dad. This is about me and Ronan." And that's when everything started unraveling. A week later, I got an email from Magnolia Glen thanking us for the deposit and confirming the date. I hadn't authorized anything. But my mom had. She'd paid in full. Booked the whole thing behind my back. When I confronted her, she acted like I was being ungrateful. "We were trying to help," she said. "You're going to regret doing it your way." I told her I was sticking with the boathouse. I was polite but firm. I thought maybe she'd cool off. I thought maybe she'd respect my decision. Instead, she and my dad sat me down at their kitchen table and told me they were withdrawing their support. Financial, emotional, everything. They wouldn't be attending. No compromise. No middle ground. Just, if it's not Magnolia Glen, it's nothing. Ronan and I had to rework everything. We slashed the budget. We cut the guest list. Friends helped where they could. My best friend and her husband offered to photograph the wedding. Ronan's coworkers helped string lights and built a little wooden arch for the ceremony. My brother Jonah offered to DJ, even though he'd never DJ'd anything in his life. It was hard. I cried more times than I'd like to admit. But in the end, we made it happen. We got married at golden hour. The sun was dipping low behind the trees. The water shimmered. I walked barefoot down the dock, holding on to my bouquet like it was an anchor. Ronan was waiting at the end of it, tears in his eyes. It wasn't extravagant. But it was ours. The next morning, I woke up to someone pounding on our door. It was my mom. Still dressed like she'd just come from church, pearls, heels, hair sprayed stiff, but her mascara was running. "You ruined me," she screamed before I even opened the door fully. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me so she wouldn't wake Ronan. She was pacing on the porch, gripping her purse like she wanted to hit me with it. "Do you know what people are saying? That I wasn't even invited? That I was banned from my own daughter's wedding?" I told her she wasn't banned. That she made her own choice not to come. She didn't care. She launched into a tirade about the Wainscots, the McLeods, the Aldriches, all the people in her circle who now looked at her differently. The ones who whispered at brunch. The ones who didn't invite her to their holiday party this year. "This is Charleston," she hissed. "Your reputation is all you have. And now mine is shredded because of your little dock wedding." She never once asked if the day went well. She didn't ask how I felt. She didn't even ask if I was happy. It was all about her. I sat her down on the porch. I tried to explain again that the wedding wasn't about social standing or the perfect venue or impressing anyone. It was about love. About Ronan. About building a life together. She looked at me like I'd spoken a different language. She left without saying goodbye. Just climbed into her Lexus and backed out of our gravel driveway, tires crunching like bones. My dad didn't call. Neither did she. The weeks after the wedding felt like walking through a fog. I should have been glowing, basking in newlywed bliss, but there was this low hum of grief running under everything. Not for the wedding, that day had been perfect in all the ways that mattered, but for the family I used to think I had. My brother Jonah stayed in touch. He was the only one from my side of the family who came to the wedding, even though he got an earful from our parents about it. "She told me I'd disgraced the Lane name," he said during one of our post-wedding FaceTime calls. "I didn't even know we had a name to disgrace." He tried to make light of it, but I could see the tension behind his eyes. He was stuck in the middle, not quite willing to cut them off, but not okay with what they did either. Ronan, ever steady, never once said "I told you so," even though he'd warned me long ago that my mom had a tendency to bulldoze boundaries. He just held me when I cried, brought me tea in bed, and went out of his way to make our house feel like a home. We moved into a quiet place in Mount Pleasant, a little two-bedroom bungalow with a wide porch and creaky floorboards that sang under your feet. I filled it with thrift store finds and handmade things. Ronan built us a breakfast nook by the window where we could sit and drink coffee while the sun came up. Life moved forward. Slowly, but it moved. Until January. I hadn't spoken to my mother since she stormed off our porch. I thought she might come around after the holidays. Maybe once the gossip died down and she realized I wasn't going to chase her for forgiveness. But she didn't call. No Merry Christmas. No Happy New Year. Nothing. Then one morning, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address, but I recognized her handwriting immediately. Slanted and sharp like she was always in a hurry. Inside was a letter. 3 pages. Single-spaced. It wasn't an apology. Not even close. It was a list. A list of all the ways I'd embarrassed her, disrespected our family name, alienated important people in her life. She wrote about the humiliation she felt when people asked about the wedding and she had to admit she wasn't there. She blamed Ronan, said he sowed division, and called him controlling. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the letter, my hands trembling. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She still didn't see it. Still thought it was about her. Still couldn't grasp that this wasn't high school theater, that she wasn't the lead role. I didn't respond. I tucked the letter into a drawer and went back to my life. But it kept gnawing at me, not the content, but the fact that she was capable of writing all that without a shred of introspection. Without a single line that said, "I miss you," or "I wish I had been there." It made me realize that maybe she didn't miss me at all. In March, I found out I was pregnant. We weren't trying, but we also weren't not trying. I remember standing in the bathroom at 6 a.m., clutching the stick, heart pounding in my chest. The 2 lines were faint, but they were there. I sat on the edge of the tub for what felt like an hour. I wasn't scared. I was sad. Not because of the baby. I was thrilled, and terrified in the way you are when something massive is about to change your life. But because I knew this should have been a moment I shared with my mom. Should have. But I didn't call her. I told Ronan when he got home. He cried, quietly, the way he always does. Picked me up and spun me around the kitchen. He already wanted to build a little cradle. We kept it quiet for a while. Just the two of us and Jonah. I wasn't ready for the questions, the baby name debates, or the belly pats from strangers. Then, one night, around 8 p.m., I got a phone call from my dad. I almost didn't answer. But something in me needed to know. "Maeve," he said softly. His voice hadn't changed. There was a long silence. I didn't rush him. Finally, he said, "I miss you." I didn't say anything. "I shouldn't have let things get this far," he went on. "I should have stood up to your mother. I should have come to your wedding." He sounded older than I remembered. Tired. "I know I don't deserve to ask, but I wanted to see if we could talk. In person. No expectations." I told him I was pregnant. It just came out, unplanned. He was quiet for a while, then said, "I'd like to meet my grandchild. If you'll let me." I wanted to believe him. But I also knew how tangled he and my mother were. Where one ended, the other began. Still, I agreed to coffee. Not at my house. Not his. Neutral ground. We met at a cafe near Waterfront Park. He was already seated when I got there, wearing a sweater I bought him 2 Christmases ago, looking like he hadn't slept well in months. He didn't bring her. For a while, we just sat there, nursing lukewarm drinks and watching the water. It was awkward. But it wasn't angry. He told me he was sorry. Not just for the wedding, but for years of complicity. "I let her run the show," he said. "And I thought keeping the peace meant letting her have her way." I nodded. He asked how I was feeling. If the baby was healthy. If Ronan was treating me right. We didn't talk about Mom. Not really. But I knew, if we rebuilt anything, it would have to be without her, at least for now. As I stood to leave, he reached across the table and touched my hand. "Don't shut the door all the way," he said. "Just leave a crack open." I didn't answer. I didn't know yet what I wanted the door to do. I kept my father's words with me for the next few weeks, playing them over in my head during slow mornings and restless nights. I didn't respond right away, didn't rush to reopen anything. I let it sit. Sometimes I'd wake up and imagine my mother calling, voice soft for once, maybe even crying, asking to be let back in, to see the nursery, to feel the baby kick. But every time I picked up the phone, it was someone else. She never called. Ronan didn't ask questions. He didn't push. He could sense the storm still rumbling behind my ribs, and instead of trying to clear it, he just held space for me in the silence. The doctor said we were having a girl. I cried when they told us. I don't even know why, maybe it was hormonal, maybe it was the deep, aching hope that I could do better for her than what I'd been given. Maybe it was fear that I wouldn't. We told a few close friends and family. Jonah helped spread the word quietly. He was more excited than I'd seen him in years, already hunting for used baby monitors and strollers, leaving me voice notes full of unsolicited advice from Reddit threads and YouTube dads. Then one day in early April, just after I hit 24 weeks, I got a text from an unknown number. Short. Cold. "I heard you're pregnant. Loretta." No greeting. No emotion. No "how are you?" Just Loretta, like I might not know who it was. As if signing her first name at the end of a message made it formal, professional, less personal than mom. I didn't reply. I sat on the porch for nearly an hour just staring at the screen, the baby fluttering softly beneath my skin. I wanted to throw the phone into the bushes. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I did none of those things. I locked the phone and went back inside. The following week, Jonah called and said he'd been contacted by our cousin Brielle. Apparently, Mom had found out about the pregnancy through someone in her garden club whose daughter followed me on Instagram. I hadn't even posted anything obvious, just a picture of Ronan holding my hand, both of us smiling too hard, the caption saying something vague like "New Beginnings." But people love to connect dots they were never invited to touch. Brielle said Mom was beside herself, though I had trouble picturing it. More likely, she was throwing a tantrum about being left out of another major life event. And this time, there was no denying it, she couldn't say she chose not to be part of it. She just wasn't invited. Then came the baby shower. My best friend Anika offered to host it. Small, just a dozen or so people in her backyard. Flowers, iced tea, cloth napkins, the kind of relaxed, intimate gathering my mom would have scoffed at for being underdone. We made our own decorations. My neighbor baked cookies shaped like little onesies. I didn't register for anything big, just diapers and blankets and a few books I loved as a kid. But word got out. And I got a call I didn't expect. It was from my aunt, my mom's sister, Marion. She hadn't spoken to me since before the wedding, when she'd texted something passive-aggressive about hoping things work out for you, despite the choices you're making. This time, she was trying to sound friendly. Tentative. I heard about the shower. Loretta hasn't been invited? I took a breath before answering. No. She hasn't. A pause. Then, she's not handling it well. I'm not responsible for how she handles things, I said. She feels forgotten, Marion added. She made sure she was forgotten, I said. She didn't show up to the wedding. She didn't ask about the baby. She sent a text with her first name like we were strangers on LinkedIn. There was silence on the other end. Then she sighed. She's still your mother, Maeve. I know that, I said. But I'm someone's mother now, too. And I need to think about the kind of space I'm bringing my daughter into. A week before the baby shower, I got another letter in the mail. Same sharp handwriting. Same cream-colored stationery. This one wasn't as harsh as the last. No lists. No accusations. But still no apology. Instead, it was a request. She wanted to come to the shower. She wrote about how she'd been deeply hurt by being excluded. How she regretted how things had turned out. That she wanted a chance to start over, not with me, not with Ronan, but with the baby. The wording felt strategic. Like she thought the grandchild might be her way back in. She wrote that she had already bought a few things, including a vintage rocking chair and a monogrammed blanket. That she hoped I'd reconsider. That she would behave appropriately. That last line sent a chill down my spine. Behave appropriately. Like she thought this was a job interview. Like she knew she had a temper, and if she kept it in check, she'd get access. I didn't respond. I showed the letter to Ronan that night. He read it in silence, then handed it back. What do you want to do? He asked. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to let her come. See what she does. Maybe she really wants to make amends. And the other part? Thinks she wants back in just far enough to say she was never really out. The night before the shower, I couldn't sleep. I laid in bed, staring at the ceiling fan, wondering what it meant to forgive someone who never asked for forgiveness. Wondering if I was punishing her. Or protecting myself. I imagined her showing up uninvited. Dramatic. In white, probably. A big hat. Trying to hijack the afternoon, make it about her. I also imagined her showing up subdued. Quiet. Trying. Saying all the right things and still somehow leaving me feeling like I'd been made small in my own life again. And I knew then, I couldn't have her there. Not yet. Not until I knew she was willing to show up, not for appearances, not for image control, not even for the baby, but for me. Because if she couldn't show up for her daughter, she had no business showing up for her granddaughter. The morning of the baby shower was the first time in months I woke up feeling truly peaceful. It was warm out but breezy, one of those rare spring days in Charleston that feels like a soft promise. The kind that makes you think, maybe everything can be okay. Anika had turned her backyard into something out of a magazine, nothing fancy, just thoughtful. Mason jars with peonies, pale yellow bunting she stitched herself, and little chalkboard signs directing people toward the drinks, the gift table, and the shade. She even set up a basket of flip-flops for anyone who didn't want to wear heels in the grass. People started trickling in, friends, neighbors, a few cousins who'd quietly distanced themselves from the drama. Jonah came early and helped string up a clothesline where people could pin up notes of advice for the baby. He wrote 3. One of them just said, "Don't let the world decide who you are. Especially not your grandmother." I laughed harder than I had in weeks. There was music, light chatter, and for the first time since the wedding, I felt surrounded by something that resembled real, grounded love. It wasn't about who showed up in pearls, or who brought the most expensive gift. It was about presence, thoughtfulness, joy. Ronan popped in halfway through with a tray of mini sandwiches and disappeared again with a wink. He knew it was our day, but mostly mine. I loved him for that. He was always careful not to crowd when I needed space but never made me feel like I was walking through things alone. Midway through the shower, Anika pulled me aside and handed me her phone. "You might want to know," she said softly. On her screen was a text from an unknown number, clearly my mom. She'd gotten Anika's number years ago during some birthday party planning. The message was long, frantic, and vaguely threatening. "I can't believe I wasn't invited to my own daughter's baby shower. Do you have any idea what this looks like? I would have brought something special. I already bought things. You're letting her isolate me. This is shameful. And at the end, you have an opportunity to do the right thing and include me. If you don't expect me to pretend this didn't happen." I read it, blinked, then handed the phone back. "She didn't send that to me," I said. "She didn't want you to ignore it," Anika replied. "She knew I'd show you." She was right. That was the real thread running through all of this: control. My mom didn't want reconciliation, she wanted narrative management. She wanted to be able to say she was invited, that she'd chosen not to come, that she had the moral high ground. But this wasn't high school theater. No more backstage passes to the performance of my life. I didn't respond. Neither did Anika. We tossed our phones into a drawer and rejoined the party. The next morning, a delivery truck showed up at our house. Ronan was out back, planting something in the garden. I opened the door in pajamas and stood blinking at the driver. "You're Maeve?" he asked, glancing at a clipboard. "Yep." He motioned toward the truck. "Got a few large boxes. Furniture. Pre-assembled. Special instructions say white glove delivery, so we'll bring it in." "Furniture?" I didn't remember ordering anything. But I nodded and stepped aside. They carried in 3 large items, each wrapped in thick blankets. A rocking chair. A dresser. And a full-sized bassinet, all pristine white, clearly expensive. Ronan came in as they were finishing up, wiping his hands on a towel. "Did we buy a nursery set I forgot about?" he asked. "No," I said. And then I saw the envelope taped to the side of the bassinet. Inside, a card. A thick, linen cardstock with gold trim. One sentence in my mother's handwriting: "I hope this helps you feel more prepared to be a mother." No signature. No receipt. No way to return it. The message wasn't kind. It was pointed. I'm still involved. I still have a role. I still matter. It felt more like a dare than a gift. I sat in the nursery for an hour that day, just staring at the rocker. The way it creaked gently when I pushed it with my toe. The sharp lines of it, far too elegant for the rest of our home. It didn't belong. It didn't feel like it was bought for a baby. It felt like it was bought to be seen. Ronan stood in the doorway, watching me quietly. "You don't have to keep it," he said after a while. "Not if it feels wrong." "It does," I said. We moved the furniture into the garage that evening. Covered it up. Neither of us said much. But I felt lighter, like closing a chapter without even writing the final page. A few days later, my dad called again. "She told me she sent something," he said, cautiously. "She did. She doesn't know I'm calling." I let out a breath. "Okay. I know how it looks," he said. "But I think she really believes this is how she makes things right. Not with words, but gestures." "But they're not gestures if they're meant to erase everything she did," I replied. "They're just damage control." There was a long pause. "I'd like to come see you," he said. "Just me." And this time I didn't hesitate. "Okay," I said. "You can." He came by that weekend. Brought a bouquet of sunflowers and a used copy of Goodnight Moon, said he remembered reading it to me when I was little, though I didn't remember that. He didn't ask to see the nursery, didn't ask about the shower, didn't bring up my mom. We sat in the backyard drinking lemonade while Ronan grilled something off to the side. And as the sun dipped behind the trees, my father turned to me and said, "You're going to be a wonderful mother." It caught me off guard. I didn't realize how badly I needed someone from my family to say that out loud. "Thanks, Dad," I whispered, looking down at my belly. "I'm trying to be." And I was. But it was going to take more strength than I thought to raise this baby in the shadow of my mother's absence, and the heavy presence she still cast from afar. The weeks leading up to the birth were quiet. Not peaceful, exactly. There was a lot of anticipation, anxiety, and the late pregnancy kind of discomfort that makes you rethink the entire architecture of your body, but quiet in the emotional sense. My mom had stopped reaching out, at least directly. My dad visited every other week, sometimes with flowers, sometimes with books, once with an old knitted baby blanket he said had been mine. He never mentioned Loretta unless I did. And even then, he treaded lightly. I appreciated that. He wasn't trying to convince me to let her in. I think, deep down, he knew she'd burned a bridge too many. The nursery finally felt like our space: soft yellow walls, a shelf lined with classic children's books, a second-hand bassinet Ronan refinished himself. He spent hours in that room when I wasn't looking. I'd catch him folding tiny clothes, adjusting the mobile, reading articles about sleep schedules. When our daughter, Isla, was born, the world shifted. Everything narrowed into focus. The weight of her in my arms made everything else, every argument, every letter, every door slammed shut, feel far away. Like it had happened to someone else. A past life. One I wasn't planning to return to. She came into the world on a rainy Tuesday, with big eyes and a quiet little squeak of a cry. My dad was the first family member to meet her. He held her like she was glass and looked at me with so much pride, I could barely breathe. "I wish your mother could see this," he whispered. "But I understand why she won't." I didn't reply. But I did squeeze his hand. 2 weeks after Isla was born, a courier showed up at the house with a manila envelope. No return address, again. But I knew it was from her. The paper was thick, the kind she always used for holiday letters and invitations. Inside was a 5-page statement, written like she was preparing for a courtroom defense. She laid out her version of the events: how she felt pushed out of the wedding, silenced during planning, excluded from my pregnancy. She wrote about how painful it was to not be part of her granddaughter's life, and how she only ever tried to help. And at the very bottom, in small print, a single request: I would like to have a naming ceremony at Magnolia Glen. Nothing formal. Just something to introduce Isla properly to the world. I laughed when I read it. Not out of humor, out of sheer disbelief. She still didn't get it. Still thought that appearances and grand gestures were the answer. Still thought she could rewrite history with a formal gathering and some monogrammed napkins. I could have ignored it. Tossed it in the trash and moved on. But this time, I decided I was done being passive. I was going to respond, once and for all. And I was going to do it in a way she couldn't ignore or twist into her own narrative. 3 weeks later, I sent out my own invitations. A small brunch, hosted at our home. Nothing elaborate, just a handful of family and friends, some pastries, tea, and a chance to welcome Isla into the world in the same warm, quiet way she arrived. The twist? I mailed one of those invitations to my mother. Not to invite her, but to let her see the life we were building without her. I included a printed photo of Ronan holding Isla, their foreheads pressed together, both of them smiling with their eyes. On the back, I handwrote a single sentence: "This is what love looks like when it doesn't demand control." That was it. No threats. No explanations. No bridges offered. Just the truth. I didn't hear from her for a while after that. No text. No letters. Not even a knock on the door. But then something changed. I started getting messages, from her friends. From the cousin she always tried to impress. From the very same social circle she used to weaponize against me. They reached out one by one. Quiet, private messages. Nothing dramatic. I heard about everything. I'm sorry. We never knew the full story. We're proud of you for standing your ground. Apparently, the photo made the rounds. I'm not sure how. It could have been one of those cousins, or maybe even my dad. But somehow, people started to see. And Loretta? She couldn't control the narrative anymore. The silence that followed wasn't loud, it was defeated. No more furniture. No more formal gestures. No more guilt-tripping through intermediaries. She didn't get what she wanted. She didn't get the fancy event, or the photo ops, or the legacy moment at a venue that was never hers to claim again. She didn't get the naming ceremony. She didn't get Isla. Instead, we did. We got sunny mornings in the nursery. We got bedtime stories and giggles and spit up on our shirts. We got a life that felt real, messy, soft, and sacred. We got freedom. And Loretta? She was silent. The kind that comes not from anger, but from clarity. The kind of silence that says, you had a seat at the table, and you walked away. We didn't move it. We just stopped waiting for you to come back. And in the end, that was the most satisfying part of all. Not revenge by fire. Not cruelty. Just living well.